Previously on Unpacked.
I didn't care how many times he would beat me.
I don't think I will ever cry as much as I did that day.
But I had voices inside my head.
The biggest thing I needed was my father.
Thandi, Mavata and Mmatshepo have both been admitted into a mental institution. This is part 2 of the conversation. Let's continue to unpack. How did your episodes manifest themselves?
For me, I'm a crybaby. So they start with crying. And then, like how she said, it's almost like there's something inside me that just wants to come out, but I'm like trying to press it down, don't come out. But I start crying, but for me, the main one that always scares me is the negative thoughts. So as soon as I get my attack, everything is like literally to a point where all I know is we are having this fight. We will never recover from it. So me and my child having a little, I have teenagers who like sometimes they just sit in the car while you're driving home, them to school, and she just sits and she doesn't talk. Believe me, as soon as it reaches the point where I'm like panicking and I'm like, wow, is this now the relationship I'm gonna have with my child? It gets to a point where I'm like, I'm taking you home to my mother. I never want to see you because you are. It takes a small scenario or situation and makes it so big that there is no way we'll recover.
It's almost like, it reminds me of that saying where they say you're having a bad day, you're not having a bad life.
Yes.
So for you, a bad moment feels like your life is bad.
For me, I'll talk like in a relationship with my partner. As soon as we have a fight, it's over.
So it's quite extreme beyond what the average person would experience as this is just an argument.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna get past it. To you, it's the end of the world.
Yes. So mine is a mixture of I get anxious, I overreact. Like when I'm saying a small thing like this, a small fight. One person I can work with very well is my sister who gets me because I'm gonna be like freaking out about why would you use 8 pages instead of 4?
Yes.
And we have this little fight. And that fight, I'm already thinking she's never going to work for me. But it was only after I've come down. I'm like, ooh, sorry. And I'll like now have to find ways to kind of be, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it was not that bad. Can I take you out for life? So my life is that because when I'm in that space, even in my relation, when I'm in that space where we're fighting, I really don't see us going forward.
And I think you're saying it so well, and will help to better equip people who are living with or are the loved ones of people who experience what you experience. So in a moment where you call it overreacting, but in reality, what you're experiencing on the inside, overreacting is what maybe the other person experiences.
Yeah.
Where you're like, hold on, it's not that deep. It's actually okay. But that person, if they are aware of what's happening and can be like, it's okay, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not rejecting you. It's like sometimes you'll get the people who will say, if somebody's, just a small constructive criticism, next time maybe try to do it like this. To you might feel like somebody's telling you're a bad person.
Exactly.
And now it's like, oh, I'm being rejected. It's like, no, we're just dealing with this little thing. Am I correct?
Yes,
Totally correct. And it goes as far as like we likely these days because of WhatsApp and all that, where you can block a person. For me, one thing, have a little chat with me that leads to a disagreement that makes me feel that way. I block you. I delete your number. Because I'm avoiding saying all the bad things, making you look like this horrible person, telling my mother, telling my friend. And so I rather erase you. My head operates as in like, I'm erasing you. I don't see your picture. You see.
So I'm also erasing you because then you can't hurt me.
Yes.
And also, if I understand you correctly, and many people have expressed it in this way, that you want to reject people before they reject you.
Exactly.
So if you're like,
so right.
I see the direction, I'm cutting this off,
done.
you're blocked, I'm deleted. Do you also kind of experience it the same way?
Yes, definitely. I think I just wanted to touch on something that you said now, that I think for me as well, when I would have these attacks, once I started understanding it myself, with whoever was around me, when I could feel that, okay, something's happening and I'm already in it, I'm hyperventilating, I would tell them that, hey, I'm not dying. Just help me breathe. Like, I'm fine. Because like you said, they might see it as an overreaction. You're dying. It's over. Well, I know that, okay, you know what? This is something that would occasionally happen to me. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I'm going to be fine. We're going to calm me down. So I had learned rather to be able to tell the person who I was with at the time that, hey, I need you to help me breathe. Like, stop everything. Let's count. Let's get water. Let's whatever. I'm not dying, you know. But just to come back to what you're saying about, you know, sometimes you get to the point where you're like, you know what? Because you might hurt me, let me rather pull away. Let me rather almost reject you before you reject me. You know, let me kind of step back.
Yeah, but also there's this thing that I keep saying to everyone that I interact with around the subject. For me, we overreact in these issues of fights, but we overreact in everything. Like, for me personally, I find myself a small project going global because I never think small.
Give me a practical example of what would be, and give me an example of something that every person maybe deals with on a day-to-day basis.
For an example, I started a business where everyone in the industry or the space where this business is would literally say 200 people attending the event, great, it's big, good numbers, 500 and all that. But because of how my brain operates, that time when that concept, I was sitting writing it down, it was a global concept. I was seeing this event happening across the globe. And when I went for interviews, people will ask me, but Thandi, are you for real? You cannot even have 500 women in one room together agreeing and having fun together. How are you going to have 15,000? And now, because my brain is also, almost I grew up with this thing of I have to prove them wrong. So my life is this, I'm an overthinker, but I'm always like, I have to prove you now.
And a perfectionist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look, I can definitely relate to what you're saying about, and I don't know if this happens to you as well, where if you're not going to do it perfectly, you rather abandon it. Don't do it at all.
Do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now if you couple that with all these overwhelming emotions, you have these big projects that could have been simple and easy. And now you are experiencing emotions of, I'm definitely not good enough. I failed to start. I failed to da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
So now, you know, I asked you the question about how did you fathom and deal with the fact that you're going into, you know, a mental, you know, an institution to assist you with your mental health. How did you deal with that? Did you feel like you are a failure?
I think with me, no.
What
I'll
did you
tell you
feel?
why. So for me, that's when I actually include God in this, because I feel, and she said something like that, I felt like God used all these unfortunate situations, used them to actually prepare me for what he was actually, you know, leading me towards. Currently, I have to deal with an inbox of different women wanting to kill themselves and being divorced, being left, the man didn't sleep at all. All the stuff that I went through. Like, I mean, this morning, a woman sent me a message saying, my husband literally pushed the car out of our garage to actually go to side chick. And for me, I can't, I went through it. It's easy for me to relate to this woman. It's easy for me to say, calm down. This is, you know, and I feel when I then went to the institution, I was already ready and prepared that you end up having to, you know, do something about this because you're not well. Like, that's why it's hard for me to blame my ex-husband that he's the reason why. I think I had this mental issues that they were just building up, and that moment with him then blew everything up. But I really feel the day I admitted and I spoke to the doctor, for an example, it was me saying, I'm tired. I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. I'm tired of literally trying to fight and prove people that I can do it and all that. I just want now to clear my head, go in here, and they explained, my psychiatrist explained everything that is going to happen there. And fortunately enough, I think everything I learned there helped me. Even now, like things like, I'm not proud of the fact that I'll block you when I feel like you're disturbing my peace, but it's being able to know when to draw the line with somebody who can actually trigger your issue. And simple things like teaching people. They taught us that it's not only about you, it's about people that you're always with, that you need to teach them how to take care of you. So I had to go back home to my kids and be like, guys, this is what I'm going through. And it was even hard for me because I had to tell my kids that mommy once planned to kill you. So, and that took forever.
How does a mother get to a point, or maybe you can share with me what had happened that you had wanted to kill your children?
First thing first, I had exhausted their savings, funding a man. I had taken my kids out of a private school. And when I'm saying funding a man is because I actually realized that it was never about us. It was about us because that's what I wanted. Remember, I'm coming from a broken home. All I want is...
But actually it was him.
It was him.
Yeah.
So having now my kids, they're in a public school, something that I remember throughout my aim doing great, big things. My kids, private schools, they have this, they're going to go study in the UK. I had all these things. And boom, I have nothing. And how I have nothing is from, can you pay for this bill? I'll pay for it next week. Can you do this? Can you do... And I'm like, I don't have money anymore. And for me, that was like, okay, I failed you guys. And now I'm not a strong believer per se, but I have this thing that if I cannot be here for my kids, no one will be here for my kids. And it's coming from what? The issues I have, where I'm like, I'm going to take my kids. I took my kids to my mother. They only lasted for 3 months. Not because my mom was bad, because of the issues I have. I was like, bring back. And at that time, I really didn't have much. I needed to start afresh. And
So you were overwhelmed, as in you had exhausted savings. You sent them to be with your mom to just relieve you. What was the moment that you're like, actually, this is what I'm thinking of doing?
Killing them.
Yes.
So they now back, and I'm like, still.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing is changing. As a parent, to have your kids seeing you moving from having this and that to having nothing, like I was saying, a crate, a camp chair, not having a bed in another bedroom, sleeping on the floor, all these things. They seeing them and they like now in their early teenagers. And I'm like, no, this is not what I want for my kids. And now I'm saying, if I'm gonna take myself, who is gonna be there for them? So I'll rather take them. But now because of the voices in my head, they literally ticked all the boxes. It literally made sense for me to actually just put together the poison.
So you rationalized to say, I want to go out, but no one can take care of my kids like I can. So I will take them with me.
Yes.
And the reason I actually want to lay this clearly is because so many people would jump down your throat in judgment that what kind of mother.
Yeah.
But I want the understanding, or at least the knowledge to be there that this is the kind of mental space, mindset a person can find themselves in, and this is how they rationalize it in that place.
Yeah.
So now you say to yourself, okay, this is what makes sense.
Yeah.
And what did you end up doing?
So I pray about everything. So I'm like, okay, I'm also going to pray about this. I'm just going to pray for God to forgive me for what I'm about to do. So as I'm doing this, I'm like mixing. The concoction I had mixed. I was convinced. I Googled. I'd searched people who killed before, and I'd done my research. And I was like, now I'm ready. But I was like, can I just pray for God to forgive me for what I'm about to do? In my prayer, I started having these visions of my kids being well off. And I'm praying. I'm like literally just praying. I started having these visions of my kids old, my daughter getting married. Something just stopped for a second. I literally said to myself, but what if what I'm seeing is actually what will happen for my kids? Can I give this a second chance? So I said, let me give another 24 hours and rethink this. So I stopped, and then I started also doing research about how I can better my situation. But this is happening just 2 days, if not 3 days before I watched that particular movie. So I then...
As in the movie Diary of a Mad Black Woman, which led you to realize that, oh my gosh, what's happening? I've got a problem.
Yes.
And I'm mentioning this because somebody at home might be thinking, how? Were you not this whole time aware that you had a problem? Why was it an option of doing this as opposed to getting help?
It's really the movie that...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you tired?
I was. I felt like I had been fighting all my life. That's how I felt. I felt like my life was always about, I have to prove to somebody that I'm worth it. And for me, it was worse because I felt like, family. The relationship that I've had with my mom for the past, or rather my youth, was not the greatest. And I still, every time I'm relating the story, it's the reason why I just want to be there for my kids. I almost pray every day that God keep me until my kids can fend from themselves. And this is because it took me to ask my mom to tell me that she loves me. And that, for me, it was just one painful thing. And part of the reason why I probably kept on having to prove her that I can do better is because I kept asking myself, but you were there, you were always there, but you just couldn't, you couldn't see me. You couldn't see what I wanted. I had to find, I started dating at an early age because I was almost like looking for somebody to just love me. And I'm not, I don't think, I think my mom tried to raise us to her best ability. And honestly, I think she has her own issues she needs to sort. But how everything affected me, I felt, I don't want to see my kids going through what I went through, because all I really wanted from her, and even today, when she would say to me, I love you, something in me, it's like, I don't believe you. And I feel it's wrong for me to take her that way, because I know most of the times, maybe she says it, you see, even now, I'm still mixed on emotions about it. Does she mean it, or is it because of who I am now? And I don't want that for my children. And it goes back to the reason why I wanted to actually just live with them.
And I think it's very difficult to, as adults, because we judge our parents very harshly, because we'll always go back to, I would never as a parent, or how could. But the reality is, our parents did the best they could with what they had at the time. And the most difficult thing is removing judgment and trying to look at them with empathy, while our emotional connection to them is, we are their children. So even if we were 50, I'm still your baby, and I expect you to affirm me and validate me, you know. So I get where you're coming from, and I'm so sorry to hear that, and I'm sorry that you still continue to go through that. And I mean, I'm just seeing common themes between both your stories, even though they manifest so differently. Is the part about the parent. Do you find yourself apologizing a lot to people?
Yes. yes. I definitely do that. I think it's always a thing of, you know what, like I mentioned, even when I'm having an attack, the first thing I do is let me apologize to the person who's there. In situations, I have days where I actually have to call myself to order, when I'm constantly just apologizing to people, even when it's not necessary. And I think it's because there's still that part in me that blames, or actually not now, let me say,
Back
in recent,
then.
that would blame myself for whatever, with whatever the things that were happening as a result of other people's actions, similar with my father as well. I would always kind of bring it back to me. It was never, like you said, you know what, maybe he's really probably dealing with something, going through whatever he has to go through, and that's why things are happening the way that they are. It has nothing to really do with me. So just to bring it back to, my story or my journey, so that I can round it up in terms of how I have come to this point where I constantly apologize to people. So when I left Cape Town, so I went back to school that time, and I said, okay, Mama, I want to go back to school. I need to fight. There's no way I'm going to give up. I went back and I had that major attack again. And then, the doctors had decided that, you're not okay. You need to leave everything. This is, I think, October of 2015. You need to leave everything. You need to go back home, gather yourself, and then you'll see in the year 2016 how things go. And that was the hardest thing for me. Like, that's when I can definitely say my journey with mental health really, really began at that point. As much as it happened before, but that's when I saw the results or the fruits of whatever I was going through. So it was difficult. It was so hard. I remember I had to pack up my things at school. I had to, leave everything behind. And for me, it felt like I was leaving my dreams behind. It felt, at that time, it felt like I was leaving everything that I'd worked so hard for behind. But bringing it back to the fact that I feel I've always had that resilient spirit, even as much as I was going through that, I remember just saying, you know what, God, if I need to go through this so that your glory can be seen in and through me one day, it's okay. It's well, it's painful. I don't like what's going on, but it's okay. But it almost felt like I had such an out of body experience. Like, things were happening and I couldn't really pinpoint, okay, what exactly is I'm leaving. In my mind, there was just so many things happening to me at the time. But something in me just kind of knew that, okay, we're going to get out of this, but also the pain was just too much. I didn't know how I was going to pick myself up every single day after that. So I was fortunate enough to get space in 2016 at the University of Pretoria. And I did my schooling there. Everything was fine in 2016. I had maybe 1 or 2 attacks, but it wasn't really that serious. Mind you, in this time, I'm back at that stage of just being really in denial about my father's, situation and everything. I'm just like, you know what, that's who he is. If he's here, he's here. If he's not, he's not. And the danger that was in that is the fact that I never really allowed myself to acknowledge rather, and say, okay, I'm hurting. Similar to Thandi here, I also had situations where I felt I needed to fill up that void. Other people needed to come and love me and affirm me, not even people, other men, because my own father could not do that to me. And I think I just cannot understand it, but I think it's so painful that, as much as we see young boys do need their fathers, boys need their fathers, but girls need their fathers too, because your father's the first man who's going to say, hey, I love you. You're beautiful.
Yeah.
I value,
They're the ones who are there to tell us that we are seen.
Yes.
And we are lovable. You know what I mean? But I want to ask you both some questions. Like, on your side, what was your final diagnosis?
Clinical depression, OCD, and panic disorder.
And your diagnosis?
So mine, when they did further tests in the year 2017, when I was actually admitted to a psychiatric institution at this time from the medical wards, they diagnosed temporal lobe epilepsy, which is basically like partial seizures, as well as major depressive disorder. And this diagnosis was done in the year 2017, like I mentioned, when I was admitted to the psychiatric institution. And unlike Thandi, I was very reluctant to that process. I didn't want to do that. For me, when I heard psychiatric institution, I thought, oh my gosh, how am I at 20 years old being admitted to a psychiatric institution? Like, how did we get here? Like, I fought that process. I fought it so much.
Again, it's reflecting the denial that you're experiencing.
Yes. Yeah.
Another question then, in movies, people have a picture of what psychiatric wards look like. We don't really have a picture of what South African psychiatric wards look like. Can you, in short, tell me what it's like in a day?
Okay, so I think for me, most exciting was when I was being admitted, because you're almost allowed to go home from hospital. You're allowed to go home, pack your stuff. So you go for the shopping in your almost high state, because the meds are very quite strong. So I'm high, I'm going to Clicks, I'm shopping, I'm getting my woolies. I'm thinking we're going to a fancy, nice...
Does it feel like you're going on holiday where you can switch off your brain?
Well, that's how it felt for me.
Yeah.
And my preparing to go there was almost like something like that. So I got my ex-husband to actually be the one who takes me for shopping. I literally bought things that I didn't need. I was just feeling like he has to suffer for that moment. Then he drove me there. And as we drive in, and I'm like, but I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah.
But okay, let's just go reception. So we get to the reception. I'm seeing people walking like zombies. Some acting strange. And I'm like, hell no.
I'm not staying here.
I do not belong here at all. This is now the first day. And they try and take you through everything. I mean, they do the bloods and and then they show you your room. And I'm like, I'm not mad.
Did you stay?
I'm not mad. So now he's gone. You remember, I was willing to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and I was willing and not only doing it for me. So already when I was in hospital, I had this thing of, okay, Thandi, you've admitted now to being depressed. You have a sea of women who follow you on social media, who you can actually help by taking them through this journey. So I'm also wanting to have this woman feel what I'm going through here. They've seen me in hospital in a wheelchair and all that, and everyone is like, Thandi, you're brave, you did it, we're behind, we know, can I talk to you about it? So for me, I was not only doing it for me alone, the whole now being there. So I'm like, no, but I don't belong here. But I'm like, but what am I gonna say now to this whole keep on going on social media and posting, this is how it is here and all that. Let me stay. So I stay, I met a couple of friends the same night, because I got there quite late in the afternoon. So made chat, but I'm like, they are mad. So there's drug addicts, there's totally mentally disturbed people who are screaming in the middle of the night. There's all sorts. But the meds also almost like they know that you need a medication that is just gonna calm you down. So you see this, but as they keep giving you meds, you're almost like, this is where I am. And because also the meds are quite, I mean, being an addict of meds, for me, it was like, walking on eggs. And, you know, it's like, you literally don't even think of the outside.
Was it the same experience for you?
No, mine was totally different. For me, so I was driven there because I was already in my state, you know, so I didn't get the opportunity to go home and pack and whatever, but that is generally how it goes. But for me, my mom took me there because I was at the doctor's room, the psychiatrist's room when I had my attack, and they said, no, you know what, he was not there. So they called him and he said, no, I'm getting her a room at Vista Hospital, it's in Pretoria. I think it's Centurion, and they drove me there. So in my mind, I'm hearing these people talk, and I can hear, because for me, Vista or psychiatric hospital was the final stop. That's when, because up to this point now, I'm always in and out of hospital. But you know, the psychiatrist is just admitting me under medical. I could deal with that. You know, even if I had to tell people that I'm in hospital, it's simple. I'm in hospital ward number. You know, but if I have to say I'm at a psychiatric hospital or ward, that would be like, you know, because at that time there was just a lot of stigma around mental health, psychiatric hospitals as well. So for me, we went there. I felt, for me, everyone was quite normal. I think I was just the one who just felt like, no, I just cannot be here. I was fighting the process because of the stigma that there is around mental health. You know, if somebody asks me, Mmatshepo, why aren't you in class? Where are you? How do I tell them that, hey, I'm actually admitted at Vista Hospital. It's a psychiatric hospital. So nobody knew. It was just my mom, my family. I would not tell anyone that, okay, this is what's going on with me. But for me, I felt that it was really... had I maybe given into the process, it would have worked well for me, because I saw they were, it's very structured, you know. You have your room. I got the chance to share with another lady. We were in the same room. You know, it's like a normal day, but they take you through some classes. So you have anger management classes, stress management classes. You have certain activities that you do throughout the day, and then at a certain time you go and collect your medication. So everybody has to queue. I didn't like that. You know, that whole process of now we have to queue up to go get our pills. In my mind, I thought, okay, no, this is really a psychiatric, you know, hospital. At that time, I'm only 20, and I think the challenge for me was that I believe I was the youngest person there. Many of the people that were there were actually women in their 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s who were dealing, most of them were dealing with divorce issues, you know, those kind of stuff. So for me, I just could not understand that, Mmatshepo, like, how? You're 20, you're in a room with women who are dealing with their husbands cheating and whatever. For me, it was, that in itself I felt was humiliating, and only because I didn't understand.
And I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask you if you were ashamed at the time, and I think you've answered me. But just in closing, did you want to say something?
There's something I want to say about that part of being ashamed. For me, my experience was actually different. I was not ashamed, but everyone else who came to visit me was ashamed. Like,
on your behalf, or about visiting you there?
Believe me, you could see it in their eyes that they're looking around and seeing all these different crazy people, according to them, and they're not even wanting to be proud of me having taken the step of being in the mental institute. But they're all about, oh, he is so crazy. She's what's wrong? Is it drugs? So they're almost like judging everything around me to a point where I know I relapsed twice. So I was back in the mental institution twice. And the last time, I didn't allow any visitors because I felt people don't want to accept depression as, because I believe everyone has their mental issue. And they just don't want to accept people who have now admitted to their mental issues and want to sort them and take them as normal people. I recall going back home with some pamphlets and trying to kind of say, this is how you need to work around me, until I used to take walks for 2 hours. And to them, I'm crazy. No, I wasn't crazy. I was just allowing myself the 2-hour space to be with me alone, walk, and this is what we are taught. We are taught certain things. We are taught time management. This is how you do stuff in your day in order. This is how you cut.
All those,
Yes, and they do these things because you've now literally shown and proved that you can't. So they're now trying to say to you, this is how you're going to have certain time when you do work and take your walks, you know, and this is how you're going to cut people. This is the boundary that people, you know, such things.
And I think that the difficulty, and maybe it might be that society in general doesn't want to accept it, because it might mean having to accept it in your own life.
Yes.
Not necessarily in self, but the people around you, because it is so prevalent, because so many people suffer from it silently. It's easy for society to outcast the person. Oh, that's the crazy person. Everyone knows that crazy uncle. Everyone, so that you don't have to face the possible so-called crazy or dysfunction or imbalance within yourself. But I think just to close it up, ladies, I'm so grateful, and I know we could, you know, continue to speak so many experiences and details. I'm grateful that you were able to share the details of your story, be open with the range of emotions. And, you know, something as simple as you saying, I can't blame my ex, is such a big thing. It's such a powerful thing, because there are many people who maybe something manifested at a certain point in your life and you think it's the person, whereas the issue was there prior. It just was exploding or coming to the surface then and there. I am so happy that you can speak so openly to be like, yes, I was in a psych ward, I was in a mental institution, and I'm here to talk about it. And also for us to acknowledge that it's an ongoing journey, that these things still continue, and you have to, it's not like you get a pill or fodile and you're sorted. So I can't thank you enough for both coming to share your experiences, to share your journey, to talk to us about what it's about. And I love the fact that your stories have similarities, but they're so different. So I'm hoping that somebody at home can relate to some of the things that you said, Mmatshepo and Sis Thandi, as you call her, Sis Thandi.
Everyone calls me Sis Thandi. So when you said it, I was like, oh my God.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing and for being so open. I really appreciate it.
We really hope that other women out there could also come forward.
And speak. I think for me, one thing I always say is that when you speak up, when you use your voice, not only do you heal yourself, but you heal so many other people. You know, somebody else is going to be able to relate and say, okay, I can actually speak up and say, I'm not okay. Because Mmatshepo is saying, something is not right, it's not okay, you know. So people should we should stop tiptoeing around this mental health thing. Let's talk about it. I mean, after COVID, everybody's experiencing some sort of psychological effect because of that, you know. So mental health is something that is being spoken about a lot. So let's stop being so afraid to open up and say, I'm not okay. Because when you step up and say, okay, I'm not okay, you get the help that you need.
And I think you said it so well as we wrap up. Be okay with not being okay. It's okay to not be okay. And of course, this conversation is not restricted to a woman issue. It is everyone. If anything, actually, the stats show that men are the ones that seem more likely to committing suicide. Men struggle with talking, men struggle with opening up. So please know that we do include you in this conversation. It is okay to not be okay. And I hope and pray that each and every one of you watching have somebody in your life that, should you not be okay, can turn to and ask for help. And if not, find somebody around you that can assist, that can support. And should it require admission into a psychiatric ward, into a medical ward, into a mental institution, it is okay. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good night. Next time on Unpacked, you're being trapped in your own body.
How did I get here to get a stroke?
I'm trying to call the nurse, but I can't call the nurse because I can't speak.
She knew that this is Daddy. She didn't know that Daddy can't speak. For me, it was both a mental and physical battle.
Unpacked with Relebogile Mabotja. New episodes weekdays at 5:30 p.m. on my YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Television edited broadcasts weekdays at 5 p.m. Open up to S3.